To
Je déclare ouverte
the House of Commons Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Affairs. We recognize that we meet on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe peoples. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee is studying the subject matter of Supplementary Estimates A 2026-27. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. Members may be attending in person in the room and remotely using a Zoom application. Participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. For those on Zoom, at the bottom of the screen, you can select the appropriate channel. I think we got some pros online, so I'm going through this anyways. Floor, English, or French. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. That goes to everyone, please. Please be mindful of the interpreters. When you're not speaking, make sure your mic doesn't have the red light. Usually, the tech happens, but sometimes people double click or whatever. That provides feedback. Make sure only one person speaks at a time, because if 2 or 3 people turning on the mics and trying to speak, it pops in their ears too. And this is about the health and safety of our wonderful interpreters behind the window. Good morning, and thank you for being here. Okay, and before we proceed with the witnesses, a budget for the study in the amount of $500 has been distributed. Is it the pleasure of the committee to adopt? I see nodding heads. Adopted. Carried. Okay, I would like to welcome our witnesses. First off, we have the Honorable Mandy Gull-Masty, Minister of Indigenous Services. Welcome, Minister. Glad to see you. Department of Indigenous Services, we have Julian Casson-Weg, Assistant Deputy Minister, Jordan's Principal, and Inuit Child First Initiative. Jennifer Wheatley, Assistant Deputy Minister, Regional Delivery Sector. Richard Goodyear, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Financial Officer, and Nelson Barbosa, Director General, Community Infrastructure Branch. All right, so please, Minister, you have 5 minutes, please.
Bonjour. Let us be thankful that we see another beautiful day today. I'm pleased to be back here before committee and to speak of the priorities of my department and how they're supported by the 26-27 supplementary estimates. These estimates advance critical priorities for Indigenous people with $899 million in additional funding towards mental wellness, child and family services, Indigenous governance and capacity, nursing services, and many other key investments. Mon département est déterminé à travailler
My department is determined to
afin d'améliorer l'accès à des services de qualité. Ce travail partenariat guidé par le droit à l'autodétermination et emmène par les communautés elles-mêmes qui bâtissent leur propre avenir. Au cours des derniers mois, nous avons annoncé les renouvellements des financements dans les secteurs clés afin que des programmes éprouvés.
We're going to suspend just temporarily until we check the interpretation. Sorry, Minister. Again, do we go from the top, or would you like to just continue where you were?
Continue from the first paragraph.
Okay, thank you.
Au cours des derniers mois,
In recent months, we have announced the renewal of funding in key sectors so that proven programs can continue to produce results.
$0.55 billion to support requests through Jordan's Principle from April 2026 to March 31st, 2027. This includes $775 million in new funding. I also announced $115 million to extend the Inuit Child First Initiative through March 31, 2027. These investments provide immediate stability for families and allow communities to continue delivering essential supports for children without interruption. As wildfire season begins, our government understands that supporting communities on the front lines of natural disasters and extreme weather events is of critical priority. This is why Indigenous Services Canada is allocating an additional $55.6 million to the Emergency Management Assistant Program in 2026-2027. This funding is going to support community capacity, preparedness, mitigation, and that includes initiatives like Fire Smart and emergency management coordination. We know that during wildfires, flooding, and other events, there can be devastating impacts on communities, and this is why we continue our support in this space. We've also renewed $283 million over 2 years, starting in 26-27, to support Indigenous governance and capacity programs. This investment supports First Nations governments with the resources to build governance structures, plan for the future, and strengthen their communities. Monsieur le Président, j'aimerais maintenant prendre...
Mr. Chair, I want to take a moment now to talk about priorities for the coming year. One of my most important priorities is really to support children and the youth in Indigenous communities. I have heard from families across the country, and I've heard that their needs for services is something, their service needs is something that we have to work on to ensure that children can grow up safely and receive support. And they also need to have strong connections to their culture.
Jordan's Principle and the Inuit Child First Initiative. I've also proposed a new path forward for long-term reform of First Nations Child and Family Services programs. The Government of Canada is committing $35.5 billion starting in 2027 for 7 years, and an additional $4.4 billion annually after that to advance First Nations-led approaches. This funding will support First Nations in exercising their right to care for their own children by strengthening prevention-focused services, supporting families, enabling communities to design, deliver programs that are rooted in their own law, cultures, priorities, and languages. The coming into force of the Ontario Final Agreement at the end of the last month has been something that is truly transformative. It is change in a space that is critical. I'd like to thank Regional Chief Benedict and Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler for their hard work and collaboration, as well as the many members and participants that were with us on the historic day as we welcome this working relationship through ceremony. Une autre de mes grandes priorités est basée sur l'eau.
One of my another great priority is water. Clean drinking water is key to health and dignity.
To build on progress, committing $2.3 billion over 3 years, starting in 26-27, to renew the First Nations Water and Wastewater Enhancement Program. Ces investissements permettra de soutenir plus de 800 projets.
This will ensure that we help communities modernize their network, their water networks, and to also train more water resources operators and also enhance local capacities and prevent new warnings about clean water.
Ending long-term water advisories. We've also made real progress in this space, lifting 156 long-term drinking water advisories since 2015. There is more work to do in this space. Most recently, on May 27, Okanese First Nations lifted their drinking water advisory. I'd like to congratulate Chief Stonechild on this important step forward for his community. However, as I mentioned, we know that every community needs to ensure that they have lasting access to safe drinking water. Passing the First Nations clean drinking water legislation is a crucial step in achieving this. Our goal for our government is committed to introducing water legislation before the end of spring. This is a commitment that I intend to keep. I will have more information to share with the committee members about this very soon. Au cœur de tout ce travail se trouve.
At the heart of all of this work lies the importance of partnership. At Titiminich, I have built relationships actually with all communities across the country, and I'm happy with the progress that I'm encouraged by the progress that we are making to find solutions that respect the support and leadership of the Indigenous people so that they can build their own future. Projects are underway, but we know that they are quite a few. We have to make sure that we make real and sustainable change. That means we have to continue listening, respect our commitments, and improve the way in which Indigenous Services Canada works with, in partnership with communities every day. Thank you. Miigwech. Thank you.
Chief Miigwech. Now we go to the 6-minute round. First up for the Conservatives, we have MP Morin, please.
Thank you, Chair. And good morning, Minister. Giksi Payo. An easy one. You mentioned water as a priority. So, and you mentioned before the spring. Now, the government has missed deadlines on your stated goal of before the fall, before the end of the year. The Prime Minister promised the spring. It's now the summer. I guess I'll give you a technicality in terms of the session being the spring session or whatever we brand it. But an easy one is, will you commit to getting the water legislation tabled before next Friday, before the House rises for the summer?
Thank you. Is my mic on? Thank you. Good morning. Nice to see you, MP Morin. Pleasure to come here, pleasure to speak on this. As I've stated in my opening statement, this is a commitment. We heard the Prime Minister himself make this commitment at the Assembly of First Nations.
Sorry, Minister, we only have so much time, but is it a yes or no before this Friday?
I am responding to the question. The Prime Minister made the commitment. I intend to uphold that commitment. The last time I checked, spring started with the summer solstice. That hasn't arrived yet. We're still in spring.
So before next Friday, are you going to introduce the legislation? Yes or no?
I did just answer the question.
Is that a yes or no?
Before next Friday is summer. We are still in spring. Have we introduced in spring? This is what we intend to do. That was the commitment that was made.
Okay, thanks for the non-answer there, or the vague answer.
Well, I did answer.
The next
you
question
asked if I was going to introduce it before summer,
Chair.
and that's what I intend to do.
So the estimates include the operations of your department. Now, going through your department and its operational plan, its departmental plan, it's a $25 billion budget, and the first thing you cited was health of children and health of families. The first thing in your departmental plan says the percentage of First Nations adults living on reserve who reported being in excellent or very good health. For the last 3 or 4 fiscal years, it's been 37.8%, 37.8%, 37.8% in your target, in your actual results. And then it go down, it has an asterisk into it that says these are actual, even though it says the last 3-4 fiscal years, these are actually from 2015. And your target is 44%. How can you justify a departmental plan for $25 billion on the health of families and children that just copies and pastes results for a goal?
Thank you for the question. I'm very proud to be a minister that operates the second largest budget in government, and there is a significant commitment in the health space. One of the targets, that I've come to understand in working in this space is ensuring that we are able to meet communities in the space that they're in. So looking to modernize, looking to improve has always been what I have presented as a minister, ensuring that we're able to respond to in-community healthcare, virtual healthcare, any kind of services that are online.
Where are the targets for your results?
Is the next step that we want to ensure that we're able to have a larger sampling for how we want to ensure that we're tracking. And one of the mandates that we received in the budget was really to modernize healthcare delivery in the North. I think this is going to really present an accurate portrait and frame. If you wish to have additional information in this response, I'll turn to my department officials, asking for one of them to supplement.
Thank you for the response. The next question that I have is percentage of health infrastructure with a good rating of indication of good. In 2023, it was 84%. In 2024, it was 80%. In 2025, it was 84%. And your goal is actually to lower the good infrastructure of healthcare to a target of 75%. Why are you actually targeting health infrastructure to get worse in your departmental plan?
I'll ask my officials to respond.
Thank you for the question. I would say in response to the Auditor General's report of a few months ago, where she indicated that there were needs for improvements to health facilities, the department committed to assessing each health facility on a triannual basis, so every 3 years. Those are the important measures to determine the efficacy of a piece of infrastructure, its lifespan, its needed repairs and replacement. So that process is underway. We committed to do that, and we tabled that at the PACB committee. Thank you for your question.
Thank you for the answer. Minister, your I think you can agree that disproportionately poverty affects Indigenous people. Would you not agree with that? Especially in the rural communities, would you agree?
I can attest that, yes.
And
I can attest, meaning I also have endured that growing up in a community being raised by a single mother having lived in poverty.
These results, some of them are projected to go down. A lot of them, in my opinion, are copy and pasted. I don't think the answer was sufficient in terms of why these numbers are copy and pasted for a $25 billion budget. They are very clearly copy and pasted because they're the exact same number. In fact, I don't overnumber. A lot of these goals and these targets actually come from KPIs. As the first Indigenous Services Minister, I hope you do change this, but would you not agree that paying bonuses for these types of KPIs and results is wrong?
Thank you for the question. I'll ask my departments to answer on the departmental plan.
Minister, the question's to you because you hold the ultimate pen over this authority of paying bonuses for these types of results.
Yeah. I do, want to clarify that a portion of bonuses, as which you frame, are actually holdback pay. And this is pay that we provide to staff for their performance and they reach the measures of the role that they're playing within the department. And the numbers that you've quoted online and, through other measures and trying to communicate to Canadians are actually inaccurate.
Those are your numbers from your own websites. The government's own numbers.
I think that, if you want additional information on what that means, I can turn to my officials and ask them to clarify.
The question was to you on whether you would justify it or not.
Okay, hold on. That's time, so we don't have time for anymore, but we're going on to the next round. And we have MP Levac for 6 minutes, please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair. Madam Minister, thank you very much for being here this morning, and thank you for your presentation, and thank you for your excellent work at the helm of this very important department. Very often in your speeches and statements, and even this morning, you talked about the importance of self-determination for the First Nations. They have to be at the center of decisions that involve them. And with the Canadian Human Rights Tribunals, we have been requested to transform services to families and children. And so the plan was to have regional agreements. And you said the Ontario plan has just been completed and implemented. So could you talk to us a little bit more about the repercussions that this will have with children's services, First Nations children's services in Ontario, and how does it translate in reality with these children in those communities? Answer. Thank you. First of all, I would like to say that I'm very proud of the work that has been done. Re-establishing the process of taking care of children in the most vulnerable time of their lives is not an easy task. That's the work that Chief Benedict and others played in that role. They had engagement with the members of their communities, with young people and others who work in this domain. I think that this is something that was a very difficult discussion, but an important one. The way in which they developed the process to redefine that space, to make sure that children are connected to their communities, that they receive access to their language and also connect with members of their communities, that is very important. I also want to highlight that the process of the work that we're doing on this file now is to engage communities and First Nations to work with them to define this space for their needs. We know that there are many languages, there are many relations with ancestral land for these communities, and this is why me as a minister, I want to have an approach to strengthen this relationship. We don't want to have a single process for all First Nations in Canada. We want to work with all nations using their approaches. I am proud of the amount that we injected in this domain. I'm happy that many nations have agreed to push this forward. They're at the table, they talk with us, and they do the work that their members have requested, their members, and that's important, and that's the focus of this. And I think that recent news that I heard in Manitoba during the Assembly of Chiefs, they said there was a request for this work, there was demand for this work. So we really want to support Manitoba nations, that their voice is loud and clear around the table, that they are the ones who want to do this work. Question: can you give us a progress report about other agreements that have been signed across the country? You have talked about your native province, Manitoba. Have you had discussions with Manitoba and other provinces? How far have you gone with those cases? I'm just back from a short tour in Manitoba, and this is a discussion that I had with Chief Cowley Wanson and other chiefs that were there. Also, the former national chiefs, Miss McAdee, who talked about the government approach. And one of the things that encouraged me during those meetings is that the approach that we chose to support nations in their decision-making is relying on reconciliation, is leaning towards reconciliation. So if we want to take care of children, and if we want to make sure that they continue to be connected to their nations, we need to give them space to determine what are the parameters for that approach. In Manitoba, we received good news. We are working currently with territories, Treaty 8 territories, and we are in discussions with Treaty 7 and Treaty 6. We are starting discussions in British Columbia. Same with Northern Atlantic. There are many communities who are interested in this space. We had some discussions in Quebec. Ontario has been completed. I just want to assure you that in our approach, or make sure that in our approach, we're not using a one-size-fits-all. We are there to work with communities, and we want to reflect in this process their needs. That's all the time I have. Thank you.
10 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Merci, Madame.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Madam Minister. Thank you to the entire team for being here today. Well, I didn't experience the same reality as you did, but as a spokesperson for Indigenous Affairs, I always believe that that was different than from being a spokesperson for other issues. And as you said, it is the indigenous people who have to decide for their own future. From the get-go, you have outlined your priorities for this supplementary estimates, and you also mentioned 2027. As a spokesperson, I have received demands and some concerns that have been raised by First Nations communities. We know that the Innu community is very strong where I come from. One of the issues I want to bring forward to you, as you talked about children, there are many of them in Indigenous communities. We know that we want to give our all to children, and we have been working on Bill S2 for quite some time now. And I think it's a priority bill. This would be a bill that, if it becomes law, will influence the budget. And we agree with that. So since it's an emergency, we know that we have until June 14 to respond. But because I'm in this community and with what we are hearing outside, of course, we always have to rely on the main source to know what's happening on a specific file or another. Senator McCannon, for example, appeared before the committee and said that the government was not necessarily reacting to this. So apparently you would have said that the Prime Minister did not want amendments from the Senate, so it was this bill was being refused. why I'm mentioning this for this bill. All the witnesses who talked to us are claiming that the government had decided these children's identities. So normally it's those nations that have to determine their children's identities. So I'm asking myself, why don't we allow these children the right to have their own identities? You talked about language, you talked about culture, you talked about self-determination, and we have heard chiefs say that their children may not even be able to have their own identity and enjoy this access to their community, to their culture, to their language. So I think this is an important issue. And you mentioned it in your priorities. You mentioned children. But this bill will have a main influence, of course, not only on these young people, but also on the future of communities. In some communities in the North Coast, for example, we know that in 40 years' time, that community will shrivel up in spite of the fact that the number of children are increasing. So what will happen with this bill? Will we bring back S2 as a government priority? Will we finally give these children the right to be themselves, the right to be part of their nations, and to ensure that their culture and their language prospers and grows, and of course enhance their rights? Thank you for your answer, Madam. Thank you, MPG. I appreciate your question. Firstly, I would like to talk about the testimony of Senator McCallum. I think that the senator did an exceptional service in representing Indigenous people and Indigenous women. I truly appreciate her work in this space. But with all due respect, I do not have the same thinking. I did not have the same understanding of the question. So I was surprised when I heard that before the committee she stated that the Prime Minister said something. I have no recollection of that. I cannot speak to how she makes a presentation in committee, but I want to be sure that you understand that when I started working on S2, it was about enfranchisement. There were 350 people who were asked to drop their statuses for a variety of reasons. But I want to clarify that having a status is to receive benefits. It's not for the enhancement of culture and language. That is done with community. I have to stop you there because if witnesses were here, Madam Minister, they would say the contrary, because they said that their childhood is rid from the community, whether it's services, whether it's relationships or otherwise. So they are already from the get-go excluded from their communities and excluded from their culture, and even the linguistic aspect and even the land, which is important because this is work that you're doing with children. You want communities to take care of them in difficult situations. You do not want a wall-to-wall situation. So I think that this is closely related to culture, language, and identity. It's a strong thing when you are excluded from those who belong to you.
Okay, so next on our list we have MP Schmale. You have 5 minutes.
Was it the Liberals?
What?
Nope, it's mine. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, perfect.
Yeah. You're just testing me.
Yeah, you were just testing me. All right. Thank you, Minister, for being here in this very important conversation here. Looking at your budget, so we just had a question from my colleague, Billy Morin, who was talking about your health, the quality of healthcare, people who feel mentally well on reserve, and the numbers have stayed static. Your department has failed to update their targets other than keeping it static. Why?
Thank you for the question. You know, I think one of the challenges that I want Canadians to understand when you're receiving healthcare delivery in the North you have to travel to great distances in some instances, and that can really have a further impact on
To your
healthcare
departmental
and
report, we're not
healthcare delivery
specifying the
service.
north.
I am
We're
trying
talking
to
about
introduce
no,
some
you're
of the
talking about the
variables
north.
that
I'm
are
talking about
unique and
MP
implicit
Schmidt,
for
MP
First
Schmidt, just let her
Nations.
answer the question she just
She's
started.
not answering the question.
Just,
Chair.
I have to listen.
She's talking about the north. I'm talking about on reserve.
I think she's talking about healthcare and all that thing, but I just wanted
She's
to
talking
make a
about the
decision.
north. She just said that.
Let's
Chair.
hear what she says, and then I can make a determination, but I can if you're speaking when she's speaking. So please, thank you.
On reserve, northern, remote, isolated communities that sometimes travel upwards to 7-8 hours to receive healthcare services, be it for a basic ultrasound if you're pregnant, have to travel to great distance. And, you know, I want people to understand that we at Indigenous Services Canada are trying to enhance the access, the delivery. There are key variables. I do think that one of the things that we also have to introduce in this conversation is ensuring that the additional work that I'm doing as a
Okay.
minister to
Thank you, Speaker.
engage the
So,
provincial healthcare delivery service
Is
to
that
ensure that
acceptable
they
number for
create
you?
space
37.8% of Indigenous people on reserve think they're mentally well. Is that acceptable?
Well, let's look at that. Let's look at that. What have First Nations endured while they're in community?
Acceptable. Your department
what have
doesn't
they
seem to be
endured
going up.
Just one person
historically
speaking
in
at a time.
community?
Remember I said about now I'm doing it, but one person speak at a time because it's tough on those interpreters right there, and I can see them nodding their head and agreeing with me, so please.
Thank you. What have they endured historically? Trauma, access to service, discrimination. All of
I
these
understand
things
that.
impact mental wellness. We as a government have announced and introduced funding services, not only to address mental wellness, but to support mental wellness services in and outside of community,
Fantastic, but your
including
numbers are not
traditional
getting better.
engagement to ensure
Your
that
numbers aren't getting-
people
okay.
are able to.
Can you stop the time? Numbers aren't getting better. You won't answer the question. Let's go to graduation rates on reserve. We have in 2017 graduation on reserve in secondary school 41%, 2018 40.5%, 2019 39.9%. In 2022, 26%, 23, 30%, 24, 25, 30%. Your numbers keep going down, and you did say, in your own words, that you have one of the biggest budgets in this government. How are you not getting better results?
Thank you for the question. You know, we've made significant this year additional investments into education. At Indigenous Services Canada, we are responsible for K-12 and community service delivery. We also do post-secondary. We also do support in all of the areas that are wraparound service to education. That includes spaces like Jordan's Principle, supporting children in care, supporting children that are trying to pursue additional areas of study. And one of the biggest targets that I've seen that were achieved at Indigenous Services Canada is the 10% increase of graduation rates across the country in the past 10 years. An area that was historically underfunded, that was capped, that did not provide the results, the necessary infrastructure, the support services, the
Thank you,
teaching
Minister.
staff,
Your own
the
departmental
additional
report
infrastructure
is
that's
showing
required
your
to
number.
support
So
those
you're saying
teaching
you get
staff
an
that
injection
come
of
into
money, but your
communities.
numbers go down.
I just want to, you know, ensure that you
this,
have the full
This isn't
portrait.
her speech. This is my time, not hers, Chair.
I
let her go on. She wasn't answering the question.
Let's get it in the right order.
Please move on to your next question.
Okay. You're talking about all this money. Fantastic. Your results keep going down. Intimate partner violence on your website, 2023, 7.5%. It's up to 16.9%. You know what your department's target is for this year? 16%. Is that acceptable?
Is there a level of violence that's acceptable? Is that your question?
No. Why isn't it zero? And why is your department okay with 16% of intimate partner violence?
Are you asking me if it should be a black or white level of violence?
Why
zero
is your number
or nothing?
not zero? Why is your number not zero as a target for intimate partner violence? Why is it okay for your department to say 16% is an okay number?
Okay. Are you asking me? Are you really asking me that that zero is the marker Is
Yes.
is zero the marker
Zero
for
is the
other
marker.
Canadians? Is
Zero
zero
is
the
the
marker
marker.
for other Canadians?
Okay, that's all the time we
I think
have.
the zero
That's-
for everybody.
That's
It
The goal
should
for
be.
everybody.
It should be.
We're
On
moving-
reserve, off
next,
reserve,
It
we're moving
should
Indigenous,
to the next
non-Indigenous.
speaker. Thank you.
Zero.
It should be.
All right.
Why are
I
you
need the mics-
exceptionally
I
having
need the mics
a
turned off.
Your
binary state?
0.09% is your target. Is a downward of 0.09%.
What you
Turn the
expect
mics.
of your constituents? That it's
Point of order,
zero?
Mr. Chair. Point of
Yes,
order.
I do.
Point of order,
Yes,
Mr.
I
We're
do.
Chair.
moving on, that's it.
Yes, I do.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Take it down a notch. Let's think about the interpreters.
Thank you very much. And on that, Jaime, you have 5 minutes.
So
That's enough.
Is that a point of order, Bob?
Okay, no cross through me.
I want my time back from Bob, so.
Okay, we're moving on.
Okay.
Jaime, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister, for being here today. Happy Indigenous History Month. I think that we've had a lot of good conversations around getting rid of the second generation cutoff. I know that S2 has been a great spark for the conversation around that. And, we've had compelling witnesses come in and talk about how it's necessary for their children. And we've had other witnesses come in and say it's an incomplete document because it's not complete and thorough enough. One of the things I feel is where S2 falls short is that it narrows indigeneity and the question of who's an Indian person to only being about ancestry. And one of the things that I think about, giving the responsibility that I have as a member of Parliament, is reflecting that 40 years ago, in 1985, we had people in Parliament kind of believe that they knew best they knew best for First Nations communities, who and who shouldn't be a member of their community and who should be a member of their community. And I often reflect, do we repeat the mistakes of the past, or do we enable, through legislation, First Nations to decide for themselves who is a status Indian in their community? And I guess the overall question I have in this is, with our approach, I know that you've said that you're committed to this, and I want to ask you, on the record, how confident are you that our government will be the one that tables legislation removing the second generation cutoff? And can you outline your approach to this?
Thank you for the question, MP Batiste. I first want to address something that I want to be absolutely clear on the record. That second generation cutoff is not only something that we need to address, that we will address, but we also have to clarify how we address it. And as much as I've heard the testimony, the attestation before committee about many communities wishing to pursue a one-parent rule, I've also had engagements from nations that want to ensure that their voice, their solution for citizenship is one that is determined by them. And I think that that's something that, even though there are a number of valid presentations that have come forward, there are still a number of them that have stated this is a nation-to-nation agreement and that we have to respect their rights and ensure that we have the duty to consult. In fact, I want to quote from the Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations, a letter that I received from them on Bill S2, ensuring that the current Bill S2, an act to amend the Indian Act, has an absence of engagement and consultation and concerning the direct violation of Canada's duty to consult with S2 impacts on nations and First Nations members. It also further says in this letter that, national IOs are there, but they are not the representation of that community, and they have the right to ensure that they are consulted appropriately, and that the chiefs of Treaty 6 call upon the federal government to engage in adequate consultation with First Nations to ensure that their input priorities are reflected in the amendments in the Indian Act Bill S2, and that they want to ensure that they have direct implication in the conversation of determining membership and citizenship. And I think that's really important, that while there are many who wish to ensure that they pursue a one-parent rule, which I accept if that's what they feel fits their nation, this is the pathway that they should pursue. If there are nations out there, like the Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations, who've been very clear in writing this letter to me, that they should be involved in the conversation, that they should determine for themselves what that criteria is, I'm also going to respect that as a minister, because at the end of the day, when we speak to second-generation cutoff, the only point that is critical in that conversation is that we as government do not predetermine for them and then consult, but actually engage them in the process of asking them, what is the right solution for your nation? What is the solution that you wish to validate, to engage your community members in? What kind of feedback are you looking? What kind of alternative solution do you wish to propose? That means that we respect the differences of the over 640 nations in Canada, provide them that opportunity to decide for themselves, because they know who their members are. Engagement at the community level and framing that is important, critical work. This is why we have the collaborative consultation process. This is one of the first decisions that I made, that I expedited. Consultation means providing a proposal, asking the question, giving the opportunity for discussion, for feedback. And as much as I want to respect, the amendments that were put forward in S2, I, as a minister, would not be responding appropriately to those nations who have come to me, and there are many, not just Treaty 6. There are a number who have come to me and asked me to create space for them to take the time to speak to their members. And not just leadership that are sitting now. We have to ensure that we do the engagement of speaking to First Nations youth who are going to live with the impacts of the decisions that we make. So I am of the position that we have to do the work of second generation.
Thank you.
We have to do it with community, and I have full faith in them and having the capacity to determine for themselves.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Deputy Gill, of course, for 2.5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, et j'ajouterais peut-être.
Thank you, Chair. And Madam Minister, I will add that Indigenous peoples are already living with decisions made by government and are suffering from the impacts of these government decisions. So even without S2, this reality exists already. Regarding children, last week I was accompanied by Siti Flamand, Chief of Manawan, and we were with Amnesty International. They came to speak about childhood as a matter of human rights to have access to housing, to be able to live in dignity. And with the investigation that they made, we know that this is not a new topic. We have talked about it with Mr. Mayor in the past. We know that this issue of housing is a safety issue for children. We also know that it's a health issue for children. It's also an issue for their education. It's also a matter of, it's an issue relating to violence, as was mentioned earlier. In short, children are those who suffer from the impact of lack of housing. And my colleague was saying that in our estimate, in our budget, there is money that has been budgeted. Forgive the repetition, but when we come to the end of the year on that line, we see that that money was not spent, and the need is glaring. 8,000 in Quebec for renovations, 4,000. Well, in short, I can't remember the exact figures, but there's a lot of work that has to be done to make these lodgings livable. So do you think it should be a priority? Because we don't really hear about it. I don't think we should have money left on the table when people are leaving 17 in a household. Thank you. Thank you for your question. First of all, I want to underscore the amazing work that Chief Siti Flamand has done so far. I have been fortunate enough to see him with respect to some cases at the level of this government and even beyond. When Chief Flamand was present on the Hill, I had the opportunity to speak with him, to look at the issues in his communities. We talked about infrastructure, we talked about housing, we talked about access ways. I'm very familiar with the process of traveling into territories. I've come from a region that has similar types of roads. Something I want to underscore in my answer today is that in my first 6 months as minister, we invested $830,000 for the renovation of houses on reserves. We also worked on 422 homes. We are hoping for 451 new constructions, and some renovated buildings.
Consideration as well. We just ran out of time. Okay, and now we have MP Morin. You have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, I just want to point out some things in regards to S2 that you said. So, we've heard the excuse from the government that we want consultation. Well, I think there's a double standard here because on Bill C5, the government didn't do anything but to consult, but they passed that in speeds not seen in generations. On an extinction bill, you're doing arguably consultation since 1985 on your own website since 2023. And now you're doing even more consultation. I'll also point out that the bill itself has a 1-year extension for implementation to even more consultation. So I do find the excuse that timing and consultation is being used as an excuse by this government. I do ultimately see the good actions of talking with communities, but I do find that it is a strong excuse for an extinction bill. The bill itself also being an extinction bill, we've heard the testimony of thousands of people at the end of the day of this and how it keeps communities out of, and children and families away from their families. It kicks people out of their own communities. Do you commit to getting this bill done in this Parliament? Yes or no?
First, I just have to comment, I'm really surprised by the statement of good actions of talking with communities. I don't think that's the appropriate framing for the engagement that we are required to do on consultation. As I've stated on numerous occasions, citizenship needs to be determined by First Nations. That is nation-specific. I can quote the letter again if you wish. There are many nations out there that feel that while the one parent may be appropriate for some nations, there is no consensus in the entirety of the country that is the only pathway forward. And the consultations that I expedited when I became minister were really to ensure that we were able to represent and report the positions of First Nations communities and the solutions that are framed for now. When government wishes to undertake, I respond on the component of the question for C5.
Minister, that's okay. He's satisfied with the answer so far. He's just going to ask another question, please. Thank you.
Your government also says that citizenship should be defined by the nations themselves. You already have that through Section 10. This is a question of status in the individual relationship and the rights of individuals with the government. Citizenship is already legislated through a process through Section 10 ban. So I do also find that as another excuse at the end of the day. Chair, I'd like to move a motion in regards to Bill S2, actually. I'd like to read that into the record.
Are you giving notice of motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I read it?
Read into the record.
Thank you. That the committee conclude the study on Bill S2 and act to amend the Indian Act and proceed to clause by clause on the bill no later than Tuesday, June 16th, to expedite resolution regarding the uncertainty in Nicholas versus the Attorney General to end further delays and advance legislation that has been agreed to by 511 individual First Nations and is supported by thousands of Canadians calling for its passage.
Thank you very much, and that's your notice. So you have more questions?
Can we circulate that? We can circulate that. Yeah.
Okay, circulate. And you have in both official languages?
Yes, we're just we have a tweak on the interpretation, but it's a small tweak.
Okay.
It's sent. Yeah.
Okay, so it's circulated. Okay, it's in the record. It's a notice of motion. Continue. You have 1:30.
Okay. So there. I'd like to hand it over to my colleague, Mr. Stevenson. He has a question as well. I'll share my time with him.
Thank you, Minister, for being here today. I believe you were paying attention last week when I had a member statement where we had a tragedy leading into the Ochis Nation. And I just wanted to follow up on that in regards to, I recognize that this particular road is not necessarily in your department's jurisdiction because it's actually a county road, but leading to the nation. I just wanted to make sure that you did get the letter that I had sent last week, and that you'll be working with the other departments to get the fully funding towards this project. And if you've had any discussions so far with regards to that letter that I had sent.
And you have 35 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. Letter received. Thank you. Appreciate that. You know, I do think that it is really important that when we are trying to support community, that they're an engaged part. And, you know, I'm more than willing to ensure that I undertake the work with my ministerial colleagues to respond when files arise that are cross-ministerial. In fact, it's one of the things that I really value as a minister. You know, being the first Indigenous Minister of Indigenous Services Canada, one of my personal priorities is to ensure that I engage my colleagues in fully understanding that every minister sitting in cabinet has a duty to ensure that they provide service and response with First Nations files. It does not only fall under the prerogative of Crown Indigenous Relations, myself, or the Minister of Northern and Arctic Affairs, that, you know, we are all there to serve in cabinet in all aspects of the service that we give, because First Nations are part of the Canadian population.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, Laura, you have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for appearing before the committee. I wanted to start by asking about the ICFI, the $115 million that you mentioned in your presentation. I wanted to note as well that Gloria Oloxi is the new president of NTI. I send my congratulations to her. In one of her first publications to Nunavut, she has called on the federal government to make ICFI permanent, and I'm wondering if you've seen or heard from NTI about whether you'll accept that recommendation to make ICFI permanent.
Thank you, MP Udlot. So happy to work with you in this new role. You know, this is really a space that is so important to me. It is important to me because as the MP representing also the territory of Nunavik, I have the opportunity to work with 14 Inuit villages. And somebody who has also lived on the border of Nunavik in my husband's community, which is half Cree, half Inuit, have experienced personally, you know, the cost of living in the north and the amount of planning and the amount of resource that is needed at that time. A young mother of 2 kids and pregnant really understands what it means for a household to be able to provide service to their kids in terms of having access to school, to healthy food. My husband is a hunter. He was able to supplement in that space. So I'm really supportive of the work that's being done across multiple programs. With ICFI, I was really pleased to be able to be in Nunavik and to present $115 million of renewed funding with Inuit Child First Initiative. You know, this really ensures that we provide the resource needed to access essential health, social, and educational services. It is also one where I'm very supportive of, you know, the National School Food Program, because I want to be sure that we have these long-term mechanisms in place. So we have renewed this for the 1-year period where we are undertaking the work of doing engagement with communities to be sure that we hear from the people that are using ICFI to understand how can this program become long-term? What kind of supports do we as a government have to take? The cost of living is incredibly high. The cost of providing the appropriate support beyond just food security is something that is important to me. I commit to doing the work with my fellow ministers and supporting all aspects of enhancing the life for people who live in the north.
Thank you so much for that response. I also wanted to ask a question about mental wellness and substance use treatment services. I've noted that in the supplementary estimates that there's $311.1 million. And I think I needed to ask this question in particular because I'm hearing from my constituents that they're concerned about cuts being made to mental wellness programming. And I think we all know how important we need to ensure that Indigenous peoples are getting their wellness through healing. And just the concerns that we're always hearing from across Canada about how we still have too much intergenerational trauma. And I wonder if you can share in your about what your department's doing to help in that area as well.
Thank you. I appreciate the question. This year we announced $630 million for mental wellness. We've also committed to invest in the space of family violence prevention. I know I had the question earlier about whether it should be zero. I think that, yes, we have to be committed to get it to zero, but we have to ensure that we're working with communities for them to be able to do the engagement, to determine the pathway, to respond to the historical traumas, the discrimination, the racism that they've endured in this space. I want to really take the clear position that we make investments in this space, $63.5 million over 5 years. This is a long-term plan. This is meeting the communities in the space that they are in, having them develop the pathway, having them to determine for themselves, because as I've clearly stated on the record, I'm not here to determine for communities. I'm here to create the space for them, to support them, to provide them the funding, to ensure that they support their members in the work that they're doing. And I also want to say that, it is imperative that we as government not only address the historical harms, the today real-life experiences that people have, but also doing the work of supporting them. And mental wellness is not one single program. It's about working with the individual, working with the household. It's about health determinants. It's about social support. It's about supporting the community. It is so much more than just saying you should be at zero. It's about saying we respect you enough to know that on your path to zero, that we are going to provide you with the tools and mechanisms that you need to get there realistically. Thank you.
And thank you very much. That brings us to the end. And I'd like to thank you, Minister, and your staff for being here today to go through some very important things that are in the supplement. So I appreciate it. And to the committee, thank you all for your questions. So we will suspend and get ready for the next panel.